One of the biggest differences between people who win and people who don't has nothing to do with intelligence. It's how fast they replace failing strategies. Losers cling, winners cut. And the scary part is both groups usually think in this process that they're being disciplined. I had to relearn this lesson in real time this year, not in theory, but in execution. And what surprised me the most was how easy it is to confuse patience with stubbornness. So my original sales plan was a single channel LinkedIn outbound engine, and I planned to exhaust all of my first degree connection pool on LinkedIn and then start doing cold email as a backup channel. The reasoning at the time was that the LinkedIn audience, while still being cold ads from Sales Navigator, was still slightly warmer than a freezing cold audience of randoms from a list that I was blasting on cold email. And so I thought, well, I'll exhaust one channel fully because the warmer channel is likely to yield at a higher rate, faster, and get some quick deals, and then we will push volume through the cold channel. But the reality of this is LinkedIn has platform limits. And in addition to those platform limits, I only had roughly 2,000 first degree connections, of which roughly 80% are ICP or ICP adjacent. And I think in about day 3, what happened was we'd sent roughly 100 DMs, and the first couple of responses started to trickle back in, and most of them were polite declines. And I realized this is just not going to work. It's too slow. Running only LinkedIn at 20 or 30 DMs per day is not going to deliver the growth that I am trying to achieve. And so on about day 3, I decided the cold email that I had planned to launch in late January or early February, only once I'd exhausted every single contact on my LinkedIn, I decided to bring it into play immediately. I already had the infrastructure ready. I had 6 Gmail inboxes all warmed up. They'd been warming up for about 8 weeks. And so I went into Instantly and I set up a campaign and I started blasting 30 emails from each of the 6 inboxes per day. So I scaled 180 emails on top of the 20 DMs I was sending from LinkedIn and 10x'd the amount of throughput going through the sales engine. And the result of that was that we turned what was ultimately going to be a failing strategy into, within the first 10 days of launching and pivoting and scaling up the output, I already have the first handful of positive signals and open deals effectively. Nothing magical happened here. I didn't get any smarter. I just stopped pretending that that first plan I'd made deserved loyalty. And I think that this is the part where most people get it wrong. There's a difference between giving something time in order to produce data upon which you can then make an informed decision, and clinging to something too long because you're emotionally invested. Winners don't quit at the first sign of friction, but they also don't wait for total certainty before cutting something that's clearly limited. This is the framework that I use now. You don't replace a strategy simply because it feels uncomfortable to execute. You replace it when 3 things are true all at once. The first one is that the effort to execute the strategy is high. The second is that the signal is low. And the example of this is that you're sending a whole bunch of DMs and you're getting virtually no responses, or for the volume that you're sending, the amount of responses you're getting is bad. It's objectively terrible. And the third thing is that the ceiling is visible. And now for me, I knew that I only had 2,000 first degree connections on LinkedIn. That means there's only 2,000 people that I can actually send messages to. Of them, roughly 400 people are irrelevant. They're old work colleagues and friends. So 1,600 people when you're doing outbound is a very small number. It's a very small pool. I might be able to fish a couple of deals out of there, but ultimately the fact that I was relying on that as the growth engine for my business was just giving me anxiety. And the moment that I switched to cold email, I felt like I was just in a deep blue ocean and was never going to run out of people to blast. So really, when you've got all those 3 things present, effort is high, signal is low, and the ceiling is visible, then what happens is more time and effort doesn't create clarity. It just creates sunk cost. And that's not the only thing that I've recently had to rip down and replace. My old sales process involved doing a free diagnostic and then preparing a proposal, and ultimately the first time that a client would transfer any funds was when they'd already accepted a custom scoped proposal, and it would be roughly $5,000 for a fixed scope project. And I realized something about this. Just because this process has worked for me historically, I literally figured this process out, completely winging it when I had no idea what I was doing. It doesn't mean that this is a winning strategy to carry forward in my new business, because the reality is that when you run a free diagnostic, it costs time in order to do it. And you're going to get a lot of lower value prospects that are going to take the diagnostic and then not proceed. And so you just burn time. And ironically, it actually reduces your perceived branding and positioning, or your perceived authority, by showing that you're giving away value for free. The good prospects would be more than happy to pay. And so when I realized all of this, I ultimately decided to tear it down and replace it with a paid diagnostic, which was then credited to implementation if a client wanted to then proceed. But if they decided not to proceed, at least we hadn't completely wasted our time. It might mean that a few prospects never go through the diagnostic phase, but they weren't going to be the best types of clients anyway. And ultimately what you get through a system like this is less wasted time and effort and clearer signal. And the leads that you do have come through the system are much higher quality. And I think what I've realized is that past success is actually one of the most dangerous reasons to keep a inferior or weak strategy in play. People don't cling to strategies because they're stupid. They cling because they've already invested time and they've already invested money. And ultimately their identity is wrapped up in the strategy, especially if they've been running it for a long time. And starting again with something entirely new feels like you're admitting failure. And I think the difference is this, winners do not protect their ego, they protect their objective. Here's the question that changed how I operate. If you weren't already doing this thing, would you start it today, knowing what you know? If the answer is no, and the ceiling is obvious, the correct move is not more patience, it's replacement. And honestly, this also implies a cadence. Strategies should be reviewed at regular intervals, not emotionally, but mechanically. Channels, processes, and tactics are tools. Tools do not deserve loyalty. Objectives do. And in a constantly changing dynamic environment, you constantly need to refine and update your strategies in order to continue winning. I'm not saying go and rip down everything that you're doing that's not working today, because it's definitely true that some things do need time. Skills compound, trust compounds, content can take a very long time to get going. But ultimately, distribution channels, sales processes, operating tactics, these types of things are meant to be swapped out the moment that they stop earning their keep. So I think the answer is this. If something isn't working and the ceiling on it is obvious, no matter how much sunk cost or sunk time you've lost in it, cutting it early is not quitting, it's competence. Winners move on and everyone else clings. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I drop one like this every 48 hours and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.